Hello, beautiful souls, and welcome to the Woo Curious podcast. Your map to the mystical, your key to the sacred, and your guide back home to yourself. I'm Eileen, a writer, a spiritual coach, energy healer, and slow living witch. This podcast is your invitation to explore a world where the mundane and the sacred intertwine. It's a haven for those ready to take the first steps into the realms of magic and mystery, providing a safe space for you to embark on your own enchanted journey towards healing and self-discovery. Here, I'll unveil the whispers of the mystical, the rituals often hidden in plain sight, and I'll engage in sacred conversation intended to stir your soul and lead you back into your power. I'm all about demystifying woo and witchcraft. So, whether you're a seasoned seeker or simply woo curious, I'm so delighted you've decided to join me on this journey. Let's make magic. Hello, and welcome back, Woo Crew, to another episode of the Woo Curious podcast. I am your host, Eileen, and I'm here today with a solo episode. I am sitting down to record this on April 30th, and when the sun sets this evening, it officially marks the beginning of the season of Beltane, Beltane. I realized as I sat down to record that typically I would put out the Wheel of the Year recording for each celebration a few days ahead of when it actually occurs, so that you might learn a little bit about it and perhaps celebrate the day that it arrives. However, that didn't happen. And as I was reviewing my notes, thinking about what I wanted to share with you today about this somewhat raunchy festival, I came across the information or rediscovered the information that while May 1st is typically the day that we associate with Beltane in our current calendar, historically it may have been celebrated anywhere between April 30th and May 15th, depending on when the full moon in May fell. And so as you listen to this, we're still in that kind of space of liminality, of shifting into the season of Beltane. And the moon, the full moon this year in May, falls on May 12th. So if you are listening to this the week it comes out, it's still very appropriate to tuck into some Beltane celebrations. So I'm going to share a little bit, as always, here with you about the history, about some of the traditions, some of the mythology, and some of the ways that you might choose to celebrate this raucous arrival of summer. Before I do that, I just want to note, if you are listening to this on May 5th, Cinco de Mayo, happy Cinco de Mayo to anyone who might be celebrating that particular holiday. We are beginning the next round of Unleash Your Inner Witch tomorrow, May 6th. It's a live facilitated 6-week course that lays the foundations for a different way of moving in the world, giving you tools to connect with yourself, with your ancestors, information around how to use tea leaves and pendulums and other forms of divination, how to use tarot and oracle to support your personal growth journey, how to journey and meet spirit guides and animal allies. And of course, we dive deep into cyclical living and all the different cycles and circles that are present in our lives. So if you would like to join us, even if you've missed the first week, that's okay. Just head on over to myluminouslife.ca/unleash your inner witch. It will be linked below in the show notes. And come on in. We'd love to have you. I am so delighted to be able to offer this course. And every time it gets better. Okay, so Beltane. Beltane is one of 4 cross-quarter days or fire festivals in the Celtic calendar. It marks the beginning of the season of summer. And so in actuality, when we look at those ancient Celtic cultures, they didn't actually delineate 4 seasons the way we do now. So I talk about, Imbolc being spring, Beltane being summer, and you'll hear me use 2 different pronunciations here, Beltane or Beltane. Beltane is more typically the way it's pronounced by non-Irish speakers these days. However, in my attempt to reclaim even more connection with my own ancestry and lineage, I do love the way that Beltane sounds. It's spelled the same way, although there are, of course, multiple spellings, as with so many of these Irish words. But the wise Jen Murphy is who I learned to pronounce Beltane that way. So I'm going to flip-flop back and forth between them a little bit. I trust that you will choose whichever version feels good on your tongue. Again, letting yourself be right. So as I was saying, we today delineate these 4 seasons, these kind of 3 months: spring, summer, autumn, Lunasa, and winter, Samhain. However, the ancient Celts actually divided the year into summer and winter. It wasn't these 4 or 3 month seasons. It was these 2 6-month seasons with a liminal period of crossover that was kind of demarcated by that spring season and that autumn season. And when I learned this, it really did make a lot of sense in my body, especially where I live. Spring often feels fleeting, as does autumn. The seasons are getting a bit longer, and I feel like that is a testament to climate change and the way it's impacting our climate. I don't know about where you live, but in Calgary, we've had several years now of autumns that last more than a few weeks. And while it's so delightful and lovely to be able to appreciate that crisp, cool air and the warm days and the leaves that stay on the trees for more than a hot second, there's also this deep kind of concern, underlying anxiety that runs along with it, this eco-grief that so many of us are navigating and that I'm learning more about to be able to better support people through. And also, Beltane does demarcate the beginning of summer in that Celtic calendar. And while it still feels very springy where I live, there is this sense that we're through the worst of winter. And there's an ancient Irish poem that is associated with this time, and I'd like to read it to you, obviously in English. Well, maybe not obviously, but it's in English. I do not read ancient Irish. But I'm going to read it to you now to kind of set the tone for this week's episode and everything what we're going to be diving into here. There is a sound of wanton winds. Green bursts out from every plant. Leafy is the shoot of the green oak wood. Summer is come, winter gone. I love the vibrancy in these 4 short lines and that green, that fertility, that life, new life really burgeoning and beginning. And so, as I mentioned, Beltane is this beginning time of summer. We have written mention of it as early as the year 908 in Ireland, but likely it would have been celebrated long before that, perhaps not under this name, but as a turning point in the agricultural year. Again, this is the time of year when the animals would be herded back out to the pastures. This is a time for planting seeds. The danger of last frost has passed in many places. Not in Calgary. We've got another 3 weeks before we're told to plant. Although, again, with that kind of lengthening season that I mentioned, it has been safe to do so earlier and earlier the past several years. Beltane is really a festival or a celebration of vitality, of passion, of transformation and fertility. It is Dionysian in nature. There's a lot of erotic kind of undercurrents running through this time, but not in the heteronormative way that we, very much as part of our culture now. It is this more Dionysian view of love and lustiness. And there are certainly lots of traditions around hand fasting at this time. So it's a really popular time of year to be married still to this day. But hand fasting was a practice that a couple could commit to, where they would be united for a year and a day. They could be married at the end of that time, but they didn't need to be. And at this time of year, back in the day, we'll call it that, I don't actually have the dates right in front of me, it wasn't uncommon to go a-maying, which is to say going for walks through the forest to gather wildflowers and perhaps frolic with other people. It was also not an uncommon tradition to bless the fields by copulating in them, blessing the fields for the summer harvest and abundance and fertility to come. The idea of sex out of wedlock, because of this hand fasting piece, was actually not nearly as taboo. And again, I don't know the actual dates around this, but a while ago. Carmen Spaniola says this: at its heart, Beltane is a fertility festival that celebrates the marriage of our deliberate intention with visionary action. It is an ancient fire rite of the Druids, and if you're into the Celtic or Irish history, it is at Beltane time that American, the poet seer of the original peoples of Ireland, the original human peoples of Ireland, arrived at the Isle and asked permission to land and inhabit the land from the triple goddess, Iru being one of the facets of the triple goddess. And she granted permission for American and his people to land and to live on Ireland as long as they named the land after her. And to this day, Ireland, the name of the country is the goddess that granted this permission. And this is a theme that we see reflected in so much Celtic mythology, where the king, and in this case, American's not a king so much, he is a poet, he is an artist, he is not a conqueror. But this wedding almost, or this permission granting of the goddess, the sovereignty goddess of the land, in order that humans might live in right relationship on it. So American and his peoples arrive at this time in the Tuatha Dé Danann, the god race of peoples depart from this physical plane a few days later, and they're still present in the other world, but they're no longer the physical plane inhabitants of Ireland after American shows up. That's some of the mythology around this time of year. One of the practices that would be associated with Beltane, and because fire is such an important part of life, especially to our ancestors, it was used to warm you, it was used to cook your food, fires would not be left to go out. We have this idea, because probably of Hollywood, that, our ancestors were really good at starting fires, but really what they were good at was keeping fires lit. And so you would never let your hearth fire go out. You would smoor it at the end of the night to keep the hot coals. You'd get it going pretty good before you went to bed, break it down, and then smoor the coals so that there was still that burning ember in the middle of the hearth from which to light the new cooking fire in the morning. And on Beltane Eve, or the beginning of Beltane, again, because we do have evidence to show that the Celtic peoples started their day with sundown. And so that's why so many of these festivals are beginning with sundown. We think about Samhain, Halloween, it's on the 31st. So are all of these other celebrations beginning kind of the night before, the eve of the day, as it were. But one of the traditions would be to let all of the hearth fires to go out in a community, and then a community bonfire would be lit to celebrate, and then all of the hearth fires of the homes in the community would be relit with a brand from that communal bonfire. Again, we think about the, unifying, tying together of community, connecting. We are all deriving our life-giving fire from one source. It's a collective celebration, a connection of community. And it was a really important date throughout Europe, this kind of time. These first few weeks of May, again, might have been shifting, especially when we were following lunar calendars. But it marked the entrance into the hardest working part of the year, the agricultural season, right? Now we plant. Now we herd the livestock out to pasture. Now we work hard to ensure that we can grow enough food to get us through the next long dark, the next winter. So while winter is this time of more rest, of waiting, of pause, entering into summer is really this time of outward focus, energy, work. And so it's a celebration, and it's like a last hurrah before the hard work really gets going. We have today still, as with so many of these festivals, the kind of Christianization of Beltane or Beltane is May Day. And May Day is a very kind of scrubbed clean version of so many of the festivities of this time. And, you know, there's a lot of kind of children's games and crowning the May Queen and dancing around a maypole. And a lot of these things were actually quite sexual in nature. And the church tried to clean them up a little bit. And, you know, as with so many things, stamping out the traditions was not really the way to go. It was not effective, for one, and it didn't lead people to be wanting to stay in or join the church. And so generally speaking, they would take in some of these customs, these traditions, and then they'd clean them up a little bit and perhaps make them a little bit less sexy. But it still was there, that undercurrent of fertility, of fecundity, of sensuality. It was there. And in the 17th century, the Puritans in much of Great Britain actually outlawed the dancing around the maypole because it was too sexual in nature. And again, in the 19th century, the kind of boisterous and subversive nature of the celebrations were attempted to be subdued with the addition of these children's games and May Queen pageants. But it didn't really work, as I mentioned. And it's really interesting, too. There's a connection here with the Robin Hood stories. So May Day competitions became Robin Hood games. And there's the history of the May Queen and the Green Man, and they became Maid Marian and Little John. So this is a time for celebration. It's a time for gathering flowers, for dancing, for leaping over the bonfire. That's a tradition from Beltane. And again, it has to do with hand fasting. Another thing you might want to do at this time of year is plant seeds. I mean, we talk about this at so many of these celebrations, but especially if you live in the Northern Hemisphere, in North America, in Canada, really. Planting seeds outside is a beautiful way to celebrate this fertility of the earth rite or festival. Obviously, you know, walking outside in nature. Perhaps you create your own mini maypole and you dance around it, or you simply have a fire or a candle to represent fire and dance wildly and with abandon. It's a time to drink and be merry and celebrate the fertility of the earth and the sensuality of your own body as well. It's a great time for love spells or love magic, and really just embracing that kind of Dionysian pleasures. It's also makes so much sense because it is also Taurus season, and Taurus and Taurian energies are really that of pleasure, of physical, earthly, sensual enjoyment, hedonism in a lot of ways. And that's, again, Dionysus really reflects all of those. So if you are sitting in any kind of ceremony, certainly fire should be part of your celebration. Thinking about what your passions are, you know, pursuing passions, what passions or creative pursuits you want to breathe life into over these long, warm summer months, celebrating your community, visioning your big dreams and future, all of these things. By the time you're listening to this, I will have held my Beltane ceremony. So for those of you who are with me, I'm so pleased you were able to join. A reminder that you are not too late to join Unleash Your Inner Witch. If you want to come into that space, connect more deeply, toe dip into the world of magic. And I've had women in that space join me all the way from woo skeptical, like, I don't know if I believe this, but I'm curious, all the way up to, master Reiki healers who've really walked the journey themselves. And it's been so humbling to hear what they take away. These people from all these different stages of being woo curious. The community is my favorite part, hands down. The connection, walking the path together, the healing of that sister wound, bit by bit, as we see and hold each other through. I also want to note, before I wrap for today here, next week I want to speak to some of the beautiful conversations I had while I was out visiting a friend on Vancouver Island. I go out each year for what used to be a retreat weekend and has now become a networking event that my business coaches put on. But before that weekend, I began this tradition last year and I will be carrying it forward. I go out for a week and spend time in Jordan River in the Pacific Northwest of Canada, on Vancouver Island, on the ocean, in the rainforest. And I spent the most beautiful week with my friend Meg. She is Wise Moves with Meg. If you need any kind of somatic work at all, if you feel like your body is holding secrets, please go and check her out. I'll drop a link to her website here as well. But we had some of the most wonderful, enriching, soul-searching, amazing, incredible conversations. And I really am keen to share some of the learnings, the wisdom that we gleaned from each other over the course of that week. So I'm planning to drop in next week with some of that, including this kind of navigating, a lot of the topics we came up against was this navigating, you create your own reality. Yes. And at what point is that a harmful concept and not a helpful concept? There's a lot of kind of spiritual bypassing that happens in the modern day spiritual girlies world. And I spoke to that recently, and I'm seeing other people starting to spark to it as well. And so we talked a long time about the reality of being a human alive on the earth at this fraught moment in history, in eco-history and political history, and holding that while building something different and having to navigate the building of that inside a capitalistic framework that requires us to bring money in to pay our bills. And it's such a complex topic. Anyways, I did want to just kind of give a preview taste of some of the things that we were grappling with and that I would love to share with you here next week. In the meantime, please come join me inside of Unleash. Please light a candle or a bonfire and dance and celebrate this beautiful, fertile, sensual time of year as we enter the mother energy archetype of summer. And if you have any questions or you just want to say hi, come on over to Instagram at I am Eileen March. Say hi, it's me in the DMs, or you can leave a comment below the YouTube video if that's where you're watching. Please like and subscribe. If you're listening on Spotify or Apple or another podcast platform, please take a moment to rate and review. It helps ever so much. And as always, share this with a friend who might be interested. Okay, Woo Crew, that is all for this week. Thank you for being here. I will be back in your ears next week. Bye for now.